So I told my partner Adam, I said, hey, I'm going to take a break from some of this grammar stuff and I'm going to do a short video on vocabulary. And he started laughing and saying, well, wait a minute, man. He says, you're from Pennsylvania. He says, you're still working on English grammar. And he said other things as well, which all of which I found hurtful and not to mention off-putting. But regardless.
Negative case.
I'm going to talk about vocabulary. Why? Because it's a question we get all the time at every class we teach. Not just vocabulary, but fluency as well. So I'm going to try to deal with both of these things. Let's analyze the problem. When people say, hey, you know, how long does it take to build up vocabulary? How long does it take to become fluent? My question to them is always, well, you know, use your police skills and determine what's the real issue. Is it vocabulary for sure, or is it just that you have the vocabulary but you haven't been able to put it together conversationally effectively? And if that's the issue, then you need to talk. You need to talk and listen and engage in conversations as much as you can, because that is how you resolve that. Now, let's step over to the vocabulary issue. You can read other studies, and you know there's some that'll tell you need 40,000 vocabulary words. Other studies that'll say 15 to 20,000, and they're all over the place. And mainly that's the difference in regard to how they count the words. The ones that have lower numbers, they normally count it by word families. Okay, so run, ran, running. All those words are counted as one, as a family. Okay, so there's lesser amounts. I just recently read an article in BBC News that said if you know 800 to 1,000 of the most often used words in a language, you can understand about 75% of all conversations, which is interesting. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but you can actually get a frequency dictionary of Spanish terms. If you want to like really look at the most frequently used terms, there's a dictionary for that as opposed to just a regular dictionary. In building vocabulary, repetition is obviously king, but a lot of it is your vocabulary learning isn't focused enough. For instance, like if you know the word casa, do you really also need to know the term hogar? Or if you know pistola, do you need to also know the term escuadra? All right, so that's what I mean. Like, what exactly are you focusing on vocabulary-wise? It should be your field, right? Like if you're an investigator or a patrolman or whatever, you know, look at the basic stuff. Do you know all your colors? Do you know all the clothing descriptions? Do you know the major parts of a car? So you can gather suspect descriptions quickly. Do you know your legal terms, like, you know, arrest warrant and search warrant, and do you know how to describe a cityscape, the names of different businesses and how to say alleys and streets and all this kind of stuff. So focusing on the vocabulary, your professional vocabulary, I also think is an important thing for you to do. Let's just take this smart study, this focused study with benchmarks and such, which is how you should do this. You know, if you do something like, I'm going to learn 5 words a week, at the end of the year, you know, you have, I don't know, do the math, 260 or something like that. This isn't a math thing, this is a vocabulary thing. But anyway, it's going to be a bunch of them. Okay, so again, set benchmarks for yourself, okay? When you learn a word, and let's look at coartada, okay, the word for alibi, which is useful in our line of work. Obviously, like I said, repetition is king, but you can do things like look at as some type of mnemonic device and break the word out somehow. So you say, well, I got co and art, right? And co means more than one person, and art means something that is created. So 2 people creating this person's story, right? An alibi. So whatever kind of device you want to use is helpful. I think more importantly is using it in sentences and imagining it in a context. Like Hollywood actors, when they're learning lines, they'll repeat the script, multiple times every day for 7 to 10 days to help them memorize that script. But they also use this visualization where they put the script in context. So if you look at this word coartada by itself, it doesn't have the strength that it would if you put it in context. So if you're kind of a limited Spanish speaker, you can just put it in an English phrase, right? Like the suspect doesn't have a coartada. All right, that's at the very base level. That's the way you can frame it for yourself. But if you put it in the context of your job, you can say things like, él no tiene coartada. You can put it in a question. ¿Tiene usted coartada? You can say, su coartada se refutó, or any combination of things, all right, that now places that vocabulary word in a sentence, which I think is really powerful. And use images too. You can even think of how that person's face would look when you tell them, hey, your alibi has been, disproven or refuted or whatever. And those images will help you retain the word, okay? The other thing that is useful for us is these books called side-by-sides, where there's English on one side and Spanish on the other. Now, while I have never seen one that is based around our job, it is very convenient in that you don't need a dictionary. If you get stuck while you're reading, you just look at the other page and the translation is there. So that's a way to build your vocabulary. But if you're able to read, and it doesn't matter how slow you read, if you're able to read and understand the majority of the words in Spanish, one of the best things you can do is buy detective novels in Spanish. There are a myriad of novels that have been translated from English to Spanish, but there's also Spanish speaking authors that have written detective novels. And man, you got the job right there, the job vocabulary that you need, and you see how interviews are structured as you read through the book, and how scenes are described. And I think it's incredibly valuable to your vocabulary to conduct that type of vocabulary training, because it's all in context. So if you have any other questions on vocabulary learning, I know I just brushed the surface here. Reach out to us and we'll try to answer your question. And again, as always, check our website. We're always adding new classes. Follow us on Facebook, and above all, stay safe.